As promised, inshallah, we'll have a session mainly with our brother Glenn Silver. Um, I will have a few remarks at the end on reflections on the American election, and we'll have some time, inshallah, for question and answers and comments toward the end, inshallah. Brother Glenn.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for inviting me to share with you just a few brief comments about why the midterm elections, what they mean to us as Muslims. For those of you who may not know that this midterm election, there were a record number of Muslims who elected to office at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. And we need to understand that what the qualifications are for running for office, and even that some of us, even if you are not a natural-born U.S. citizen, if you're not, the only office that requires that is the office of the president. If you have immigrated here, you can run for Congress. You qualify for a lot of local elections, but you also can run for House of Representatives and for the Senate. You have to be 25 years old to run for the House of Representatives, and you have to have been in the country, I think it's 7 years, let me double check. You have to have been in the country for a certain number of years in order to do that. For the Congress, yes, you have to be 25 years old and have been a citizen for 7 years and live in the state and the district you're in. For the Senate, it's a little bit different. You have to have been a citizen for 9 years, and you have to be 30 years of age. And I say that because a lot of times we may think, or you may think that certain things don't qualify you for that. So if you're interested in running for office or have an aspiration to do that, more Muslims and some of our younger people, and even some of the others may be wanting to do that, there are no those are the limitations on that. A lot of times we pay a lot of attention to the presidential and the national elections, but those are not really a lot of times the one that affected us the most. It's really these local elections. But the national elections are very important for a couple of reasons. Sheikh Hisham mentioned during the Qatira that the House has changed hands. The House of Representatives, now the Republicans have a slim majority, and the Senate looks like it's going to be in the hands of the Democrats again, no matter what happens in Georgia. But when we look at what happened, not what the outcome was how elections turn. This is why it's so important for us as Muslims to be engaged for a lot of reasons. The Sheikh mentioned Donald Trump and some of other candidates. We have to pay very close attention because I don't know, you all may remember when Trump was elected, one of the first things he did was banned immigration from certain Muslim countries. There's a whole, and not only that, but it sets a tone for the country. You have a lot of Islamophobic behavior, a lot of racist behavior. The Make America Great, the MAGA theme is just code word. It's a code racist word. This country has a very dark past. It hasn't been that long ago that all of us couldn't sit in this room together because of the way we look. And some candidates and some parties want to go back to that. To them, that was the good old days. And so just because our income and our education and some other things, this country has a very, very dismal and violent past. Where they burned crosses and hung people from trees and all this thing. This is part of American history. And this is part of what we have to remember when we engage in our political system. Islam is based on a lot of, one of the key tenets are the principle of rights. In our rights and our right to worship, there's a lot of infiltration of masjids, a lot of surveillance, a lot of things that go on in this country. And the Patriot Act, which is still in law, that if there's a suspicion that we are engaged in some kind of terrorist activity, they can take us and lock us up and not have to tell anybody. It's still in this country, even though it's not enforced a lot. But that's why we have to be careful about the people that we send into office. No, when we talk about the House of Representatives and the Senate, it's also important when we look at the foreign policy of this country. A lot of things that happen in foreign policy don't have anything to do with the country that is happening in. There's famine all across the world now. In Pakistan, we had the flooding, and they're still suffering from that. In a lot of our African nations, in the Sudan and other places, there's famine, starvation. That doesn't make the news. What makes the news is Elon Musk and what he's doing with Twitter. And this is why we have to make sure that we pay attention and that we don't get distracted and that we engage ourselves and support candidates and that are going to be the least oppressive to our brothers and sisters. You know, in Yemen, our brothers and sisters in Yemen are really suffering. They've been eating grass, if they can find it, for 2 or 3 years now. Same thing with Syrian refugees. And so, but the people that we elect in office in the House of Representatives and the Senate pretty much dictate that foreign policy. And the Senate is very important because they're the ones who okay or approve the judges that the president would put forward. That's very important. We have people right here in this masjid who have loved ones who are in federal prison or in federal jail because of some affiliation they may have had or they may have thought they had. And the judges they sit before can determine their livelihood. Young people, young men, young women. And so this is why we have to pay attention to who is in the Senate, who is in the House of Representatives, and who are in these other offices, because they affect us. We may not know about it, but we have brothers and sisters right here with children who are in prisons, in federal prisons, and the federal judges they go before, and the federal system they go before them, whether they can get representation, and the laws that apply to them are passed by the House and the Senate. And this is why, inshallah, we will pay attention and use the votes that we have. You know, this country is not the best of countries, but it's the least of evils, and a lot of good things about it. In a lot of other places, we couldn't even be having this discussion. So I'm going to leave some time for the Sheikh to make his comments and then questions.
Jazakallah khair, brother Glenn. I think when we look at this issue, we have to have an understanding of what it means for us as Muslims to be here, what is our objective, and how do we behave in any matter. It's clear for those who understand how the system works is that political participation is a vehicle for cultural assimilation. Unless, as the brother alluded to, that you look and present things as a Muslim. But the reality is, in this country, if you are a politician, suddenly you are giving fatwa on aqidah, and you are giving fatwa on issues that are of you know, top importance for us and our future in this country. So I think that as Muslims, when we want to look at this issue, we can look at this issue from one angle, but that would not be the right way to do it. Brother Glenn mentioned that in terms of what is the interests of the Muslims and how we want to understand who's on that side and who's against that side, and at what point the community or the Muslims in the nation will determine to do things in the certain direction. I mean, as you know, at one point, the Muslims in Florida and nationally were saying, proud, we are the one who put George W. Bush in the White House. Why? Because in one of the debates, he brought the issue of Muslims and was in support of the Muslims. So suddenly, you know, you take that and you are sold on that, and he was one of the worst when it comes to what had happened to the Muslims around the world. There's no doubt that those guys knew what they were doing. They knew that what happened in Afghanistan has absolutely nothing to do with Iraq. They knew it very, very well. But at the end, there was this enmity to anything that have to do with Islam, and they target a place where it was the capital of the Ummah and really the jewel of the world for many, many years. So from my perspective, if someone want to go and give a vote or go and talk to some people responsible, this is one level. But to allow this machinery, because usually, you talk to Muslims about this issue, they said, look at the Jews. I mean, give me a break. Do you want to be like the Jews? I mean, do you really want to be like the Jews in America? Yeah, they have influence. But the religious Jewish are calling those Jewish kuffar. So where do we see ourselves as Muslims fit into this equation? I'll give a few examples. So we have one Muslim woman congresswoman. And when she talks about Allah the Creator, she said, mine is a she. Okay? I mean, you are a congresswoman. You are not a mufti. You are not a alim. On what basis is your God is a she? And then we have another one who is also, a woman congresswoman covering her head. You see her partying with the people of Qawm Lut, as if, those are our buddies. I mean, what kind of signal that we are giving to the youth in this country? It looks like now anyone who wants to run for a national office, and we see it among the Muslims, unfortunately, you see the flag of the Qawm Lut very high around their houses or their offices. So where do we draw the line? That's an issue pertaining to our identity. For the sake of time, I will not go more than that. I will also talk about, it's very interesting to see that it looks like the two parties have managed to play a very, very good game. And they were good at it. And unless something drastic happened, it looked like the future down the road is for a slim majority here or a slim majority there. At one point, we used to have 50, 60 majority, where the House will have 60 more Democrats than the 218. Or the Republicans who have this big wave or this big wave. It looks like, at least from what we see in the last two elections, that unless something drastic happened, that this is the trend. Same thing with the president. We have seen it, in the last election, and we have seen now conspiracies that all of this was stolen and so on and so forth from this, in this regard. So that aspect also would need to observe to understand where this society is heading. So at least we know where are we and where do we stand on issues. Definitely engagement is needed. The brothers and the sisters in New Jersey, they have been going to people at different levels about this new Hindu nationalism in the US and their attitude and plans toward Muslims. No, this definitely should continue. We cannot just pretend that things will be okay. You have to take initiative in this regard. Lastly, I would think that the matters, the places like school board, where we do not involve in matters of legislation, school board, something along that side that would affect us and the future generation is something where we should really give some thinking. Not just to jump and start thinking, on that. Because when it comes to the national level, you cannot really get there without giving up a good part of your deen. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious. It's obvious. I mean, it does not need a smart person in this regard. So again, I do just say Jazakallah khair for Brother Glenn to share with us his thoughts. He's in travel tomorrow to Umrah, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from him, and that he took the opportunity to really be with us and share with us some of these thoughts. So inshallah, we'll have some time for question and answer and comment, inshallah. We wanted to make it short. Yes, Sahaj. The brother is saying, yani, are we advising that people should seek a small office and not to pay attention to more? No, that's not really what we are saying. All what, at least I'm saying, I will let the brother Glenn give a perspective, is that if you're gonna go to a national level office, really you have a struggle of how much of your deen you want to keep. That's serious. I mean, I'm not discussing now the legislation and allowing the haram and allow that's even beside. Or I'm saying that you start saying things and doing things that the system is not requiring from you, but you are doing it. You are giving up your identity, many of the things of essence that unfortunately, the kids, the being here would look up to those people. I mean, yeah, they are politicians, they are not imams, they are not Islamic experts, but what they say and what they do is impacting. And from that perspective, I would say it'll be safer for a person who really is after his deen and his identity is to seek those offices that really does not require tens of millions of dollars. I mean, you have sometimes, a young Muslim or Muslim somewhere run for Congress or for Senate or for a governor. Suddenly there are tons of money coming from all over the country. Why? Because he would say things that, about Qawm Lut, for example. I mean, that's one issue. Another issue would be they would be silent on the atrocities of the Zionists in Palestine, because they want to be friends with the pro-Zionist in here. I mean, if the Jews in their synagogues and in their campaigns they keep talking about pro this, why we are shy from saying there are Muslim causes that are there? Why all along the U.S. has been supporting the Zionists, killing the Palestinians day in day out in this regard. So I think that aspect is absent from the debate. And I think it should be an integral part of the debate. Brother Glenn.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair for your question, Aki. We're not trying to give you advice on what to do about running for office or not. We're just giving you a glimpse of very brief glimpse of how the political system works and being engaged. I think as a Muslim, whatever you're going to do, if you're going to run for office or whatever we decide to do, sitting here on this panel, we need to ask ourselves, actions are judged by intentions. What are our intentions? If I want to be on the school board, am I on that school board to fight oppression and stand up for social justice as the Quran and the Hadith teach me? Or am I there because I'm trying to advance my own agenda and feed my own ego, which is not Islamic? So this is the question we have to ask ourselves. And if as Muslims, we need to look in this country at the history of Black America. And we can learn from the mistakes that we made as Black Americans. I was born in 1961, and I can take you to my hometown, and my hometown is worse off now than it was 60 years ago when I was born, in spite of some of the other advances that have been made. Why is that? is because, and I'll tell you as a thing we say, all skin folk are not kinfolk. Everybody that puts a kufi on or hijab and says assalamu alaikum is not necessarily representing your Islamic interests. And so we have to decide what we want to be as individuals and then who we want to identify with. And let me just ask you this question. There's a gentleman from New York that's getting ready to assume the minority leadership position for the Democrats in the United States House of Representatives. His name is Hakeem Jeffries. How many of you all think Hakeem's a Muslim? Raise your hand. You think he's a Muslim? He's a Baptist. He's a Christian, he's a Baptist. The interesting thing that he goes on his Facebook page and he says, wishes everybody Eid Mubarak to my Muslim brothers and sisters, but he's not our brother, he's not our brother in Islam. So this is one of the tactics, as the Sheikh was telling you about, that we need to be aware of. And anything that we want to do, we need to judge it, why are we doing? What's our intention? Whether it's running for office, whether it's sitting on this panel, whether it's coming for salah, whether we want to volunteer. And this is what we have to ask ourselves, because this is what we're going to be judged on the day of Qiyam. Did I sit here on this panel because I wanted to boost my own ego, or did I sit here because I wanted to impart some understanding about this America that we operate in, and that we put being Muslims before we put being anything else, inshallah.
Yeah, if I may add, I mean, someone may come and say, well, those people are speaking for Muslims and they are defending Muslims and this and that, and nobody, would deny this aspect. But at what price? Yani, there will be always Muslims who are interested in these things and they're going to go for it. We are talking about those who are caring about the future of Islam and Muslims in this country. Because if you care about the future of Muslims, we are missing the point. It's both the future of Islam and the future of Muslims. What's the point if we're going to go back to what the earlier Muslims who came here at the beginning of the 20th century, who just look for their own future without caring much about the future of Islam? Their children are gone. How many that you find people come and say, my great-great-grandfather is a Muslim, but they are not Muslims, many of them. I mean, many brothers come to me and said, I was in the hospital the other day, somebody saw me making prayer, salah, and he came and said he saw his great-grandfather doing this. I dealt with a woman here who teaches in the church with her husband. She told me that her grandfather made 7 hijjah. He went to Mecca for Hajj 7 times. And she's a teacher in the church. She's a Christian, basically. She's no longer a Muslim. And many examples like this. So there's no doubt that, political participation is a vehicle for cultural assimilation. And unless we take that and understand the limits, the Islamic limits, of course, the bulk of the Muslims really do not care about the limits when it comes to Islam. I mean, look at this. How many Muslims in America come for Eid prayer? Eid al-Fitr. How many Muslims? 25%. How many Muslims in America come for Salat al-Jum'ah? 8%. 8%. So do I want to mislead all those 8%, the ones that I am counting on, which Brother Glenn is addressing? Do you want those people also to go into that route? Yeah, they will come to you and say, brother, I have no chance to be in the Congress unless I support and I be friend with the Zionists and support this Qawm Lut and do all of this. Yeah, I understand. But is this what your deed is telling you? At what price? So again, when somebody said, look at the Jews, yeah, I look at the Jews. I mean, Netanyahu, the word Netan, by the way, means very filthy. So the people call him Netanyahu. Natan in Arabic means very filthy. He gave a talk a few years back. Are we taking more time? He gave a talk a few years back. And he said, by natural birth, we should have about 25, 26 million Jews in the world. Just by natural birth. But he said, because of the machinery of assimilation in the West, our number is still 12 million people in the world. And he's right. He's right. It's this machinery that basically Jews give birth to Jews, and the Jews in no time just melt into the society, either no longer believe in anything or convert to Christian to get married, or bulk of many of those denominations in terms of the marriages are interreligious, which means there's no more. All I'm saying, I think the point that we are trying to drive is, yeah, look, be aware, walk along the same line, but be aware where this thing is heading. Because if we are to adopt the way of the Jews, which Allah asks us not to do, we'll be meeting their own fate. Let me close this part with this one. In a study by the Pew Research, they said that every religious group in America lost people, lost numbers. The Jews lost, the Christians, Buddhists, they said except the Muslims. Their number is steady. And of course, a Muslim will be happy to hear this, but it's really sad news. Because while we are steady, there's a big bulk who left the deen. And there's, alhamdulillah, a big bulk that accepted Islam and converted. Like our dear brother who's sitting next to me. He have, after studying Islam, recognized it. While the people who are born into Islam, they left it without understanding what Islam is all about. That's really the concern is. So this machinery, we need to be aware of where it's heading. We cannot just say, as they're saying in Arabic, just put your head between the other heads and say whatever will happen to them will happen to me. That's not how Allah wants us to behave.
And yes, Jazakallah khair. And I just want to, we're running out of time, but this assimilation issue is very, very critical. When you look at Black America, this is what happened. If you go back to the 60s, when I was born in 1961, and you came up, there was a Black culture and a Black identity and a Black pride and those kind of things. And now what happened was when we integrated, we mistook integration for assimilation. And as a whole, we thought if we became similar and we just blended into the mainstream society, that we would be accepted and would advance to some degree. But when you look at some other things, and I can take you here in Raleigh and anywhere else in this country, and take you back to my hometown, and you will see that that's not true. That as a whole, and arguably the Urban Institute, the Urban League every year, the Urban League puts out a State of Black America report. You look at that report, and you compare the data in that report to what the data was 60 years ago. And I'm not saying integration was bad. What I'm trying to get us to understand, don't make the same mistake. Not knowing our history, not knowing what the seerah is, not knowing about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not relating to things, knowing what the truth is. Because Islam teaches us to stand on the truth and to stand against oppression wherever it is. You can get in certain circles and you will be, to blend in, you will excuse oppression. You'll turn the other way at it, just to go along, to get along. And this is the danger that we're talking about, that we have to guard ourselves against as Muslims, as believers in Islam. Because the West, this world, anytime you see where people put an adjective in front of Muslim, a moderate Muslim, this kind of Muslim. Muslim doesn't have an adjective in front of it. Either you're a Muslim or you're not. So these are the things we have to guard against. And again, to my first answer, we as individuals and collectively have to say, what is our intention for our action? Are we trying to, because Islam cures all the ills, the social ills that we're dealing with. The Islamic Caliphate is the only government in the history of the world where at one time you had pure social justice. There was nobody to give charity to. Welfare system existed, but you had to find people because everything was so even and the system was operating as it was designed to operate. This history is not what people want you to understand and know. And this is what we have to remain, know who we are, what our history is and what we're from, and cling to it. And don't be turned by what's going on around us. Don't be changed, but be agents of change, inshallah.
Other, inshallah, question or comment? Let's just get rid of this. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Let me, Jazakallah khair for your questions. I'll answer the first question. The Sheikh is, I'm not qualified to answer that one about being a student here, but the first question, Democrats, Republicans, parties, your individual vote and your support of a political candidate is a private thing, and it's you have to determine what standard you're going to use. But when you preface your question about what they put in the textbooks, we have to understand something about education. The school system is not responsible for educating our children. We are, as parents. My mother made sure that I knew how to read and write and spell and tell time and add and subtract before I went to school. This is a myth that we have in America, that the school system, we send our children off somewhere for somebody else to educate them. We educate them. Before I even was a Muslim, I'm gonna tell you this story. My daughter, who's 21 now, Candace, and I was a Christian pastor at the time, but I'd never believed in Santa Claus and didn't teach my children Santa Claus because I said the world is gonna lie to them enough, so I wasn't gonna start lying to them as a parent. My daughter, I think she was in the first grade, and she went to school and they asked her about what was Santa Claus gonna get her. And she told them, my daddy says, there is no Santa Claus. The Santa Claus, who wants to believe in a man that lets strange children sit in his lap and he tell them lies? And I did say that because it doesn't make sense. And so I'm not going to give the prestige and the honor of being a father to my children to some fictitious mythological character. And they called me out there to the school because she said that. but there wasn't a lie, and nothing happened of it. But my point is, we are responsible for educating our children. I don't care what's in a textbook. My child knew what was real and what wasn't. So you have to we have to teach our children that, yeah, that might be in the textbook, that's not what's real. What's real is what I'm telling you. What's real is what's in this Quran. What's real is what's in this Siddur. What's real is what's in our history. And that's the way we deal with that. I never abdicate. I never gave and we can't rely on anything else to educate us. I don't rely on social media and what's on the TV news to educate me. We have to take the responsibility for ourselves and stop shifting it off to somebody else. And these influences won't be there. I mean, this is how we limit those influences. The world can't do any more to us than we allow it to do. And if we give up and we get so busy chasing our jobs and chasing our dreams and buying our houses and getting our cars and looking at our bank accounts, then we don't know what our children are doing. So we have to own that and take responsibility.
Yeah, I think well said. It's just, you remind me, Brother Glenn, a few years back at the mall in Cary, there was this Santa Claus guy, and there was a line of kids want to sit on his lap and take pictures. And one of those kids really was crying. She does not want to go and sit in his lap. And she kept crying to the point that this guy, Santa Claus, stood up, took his beard and threw it to the ground, took his hat, threw it to the ground, and starting blasting that woman that, be easy on your kid. She does not want. Now, what happened to the people in line? What happened to those Americans who were in line? They want their kids to sit on the lap of Santa Claus. They close their eyes.
They didn't want to see the truth.
Exactly. They did not want them to see the truth, that this is just a man. This is just a man. And the guy, he blasted that mother, left and right. But all of those guys, instead of realizing, what the wisdom coming from Santa Claus, they closed the eyes and they moved their children so they could not see the truth. And I think what the Brother Glenn is saying is very valuable. If we to trust the system to teach our children, we are doomed. We are doomed. Now, on the second part, what I would say, brother, for those who are planning, and it looks like the bulk of the Muslims are planning to stay here for until their death, that's the bulk. I would say, let's focus on having a Muslim policeman. Let's have public school teachers and administrators. Let's have college professors. Let's have Muslim librarians. Let's have Muslims, doctors and engineers and scientists and businessmen. And that's really what gives strength, backbone to the community and the future of the community. And there will be always some of them that will go into this political arena. All what we need to say, wait a minute, you need to be aware of what direction you are taking and the ramification on the community. And as far as, which to choose, I remember Imam Jamil saying, what is it? It's a choice between Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Can you explain what's Tweedledee and what's Tweedledum?
Well, I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying this. Politicians, for a lot of times, their vote, your vote is what they want. So whatever you want them to be at that moment, it's like a chameleon. A chameleon, I put him on this green table, he turns green. I put him on the beige when he turns beige. And so, you're choosing between the lesser of two evils. And I told somebody the other day that we were talking about, for example, the choice between Trump and Biden. I can remember when Biden was against busing. It wasn't a clear-cut choice, but I figured that Biden would do less damage than Trump would have done. And so they're not this cut and dried, and as the Sheikh was saying earlier, it used to be that way. And because it's back to the point about Santa Claus, it used to be a time when we cared about the truth. We've become a society, we don't care about the truth anymore. We just care what feels good. We had an icebreaker at my job today, and I work virtually, and they were saying that the icebreaker question was, What do you like most about Thanksgiving? Or what are your great Thanksgiving plans? Thanksgiving's coming up. What would you like to see most happen during Thanksgiving? I said, what I like to see most happen is the truth be told about it. That it was a terrorist attack on the Indians who lived here. There was no sitting around the table holding hands, singing Kumbaya and eating turkey. That's a lie. They didn't want to hear that. But you shouldn't have asked me. Because that's oppression. And oppression anywhere. We as Muslims are told in the Quran to stand against oppression anywhere. And I'm not going to sit around a table and cutting a turkey in honor of a fictitious situation that happened when the immigrants, the pilgrims, the Europeans who came here massacred Indians on that day for no reason. And then they want us to sit around and celebrate a myth. So we have to be careful about the assimilation. And as Muslims, and I mean, this is just it, we have to be bold enough. And then they said, well, you know, I don't agree with that. One lady said, well, I don't like that. It's just a time of gratitude, and I want my family to sit around. I said, well, that's fine. We in a state where people don't care about the truth anymore. But we as Muslims have to. We have to dare to be different. We have to remember the history of this deen. When the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam got the wali and began to teach Islam, the majority of the people around him, the Quraysh, rejected it. So it's never been a popular message. It's never been a message that's been watered down. Think about it, the Sheikh knows more than I do about this, all the offers that they gave to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you would just water this deen down. Water it down a little bit. Come on up, just compromise a little bit. And he wouldn't. So that's our heritage.
Yeah, and especially, when you find Trump and his people, are the champions of the truth. Right now they are saying they want the truth. So you know really where this thing is heading. Inshallah, for the sake of time. Jazakumullah khair. Wa barakallahu feekum. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring in the khair and the good for the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to enlighten the hearts of those who did not get to know about Islam, to know about this deen, and lead them to see the beauty of this deen. Allahumma ameen. Safe trip, Brother Glenn. And you should just tell those people, yes, I have a plan for Thanksgiving. I am going to Al-Masjid Al-Haram.
They already know that.
Oh, they already know that.
About Ummah too.
Alhamdulillah.